Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, that shouldn't be looping. Bear with. Shut up. That's a good start. I'm going to say very quick good morning to Blondie Excavations, who've just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm assuming it could be a bit of both. Good morning to Chris Ford, who's just popped into the chat. I'm going to go quickly through the chat. For some reason, and I think maybe I've oversold today's show, actually, several people are referring to getting the party started. Let's have a look. Who are they? There's Dan Cullen, looking forward to getting the party started. And Peter McKenna said, time to get the party started. What are you expecting from today? Dancing girls? Pass the parcel? Jelly and ice cream. Oh, jelly and ice cream. Jim Turner's just joined us. Good morning. Good morning. Peter McKenna says sound check, hat check, audience check, shirt check. Shirt very much check. Yeah. Listen, I've got 2 shows to do today, so I want to look smart and in best bib and tucker for tonight for when we get our friend Mr. Girone on the show. Just a very quick reminder, yeah, we are doing an evening show tonight, 7 p.m. 2 of these are up for grabs. I tell you what, while I'm just messing about here, yes, it's a Caterpillar dedicated show. We've got several new products to show you, together with the latest leg of Gilles' travels around Europe on all things demolition. I do want to just if I can break into the box. Hope this doesn't devalue it too much. But there you are. That's the breaker. There is a breaker in there. There's also a stand for it to go on as well. So let me show you that. That's what you've got to win tonight. I know probably 1 or 2 of you have already got those. So maybe take a step back and let somebody else win, or add them to your collection. I'll leave it entirely up to you. I'll worry about packing that away in just a moment. Stick that back there. Okay, so yes, that's the first bit of stuff what I need to tell you. We will be back here again at 7 p.m, as I say, with Gilles Ronnet from Caterpillar. He's been on the show twice before, and he's excellent value every single time. So hope you've got lots and lots of questions to ask him about all things Caterpillar, all things demolition as well. Peter McKenna says, no fingerprints. I shall give it a thorough dusting before I put it in the post to whoever wins that one and the other one as well. Something else, which I will when I can find the right button. I'm going to put it in the chat now. I'm hoping this is the right button. Yeah, I've written a column for today called History Repeating. I'll be going back to it, which seems entirely appropriate given the fact that it's called History Repeating. But I've written a piece today, which I've already sent in the WhatsApp group. If you're part of our WhatsApp group, you may have already seen that. If not, you can find the link in the chat. But I will be coming back to that very subject very close to the end of the show. So please stick around, because I think you'll enjoy it. It's surprising, that expression, history repeating, and everything that goes around comes around. Well, sure enough, that's exactly what it's been doing in the UK construction equipment industry since the 1980s, when I first arrived in it. So I'll tell you all about that a bit later on. But without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. A very quick good day to Frank over at Dark on Demo, all the way down under. Morning, Frank. Morning, evening, afternoon, one of those in Australia, but good to see you here. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It is Wednesday, the 19th of June. Happy hump day. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, we have a battle royale as the latest excavators from Volvo and Komatsu go head-to-head. We're revisiting a very, very big bang from earlier in the week. We're making a case for Hillhead 2024, and as I've already said, it's all just a little bit of history repeating. But before we get to all that, there is the small matter of today's mystery machine to solve. So I have a button for that, which is this one. Right, I'll tell you right now. Today's machine, not uncommon, but in order to win today, I need you to be very, very, very specific with what machine it is. Okay, so this is what you have to work with. Could be anything. Based on that, that could even be a mobile compressor, but I'll give you a clue. It's not one of those. There you are. That's what you've got to go with. Any clues on that? I'd love to hear from you. People are entering the chat. What do we got? Ken Hatch has just joined us as well. So let me say a very quick good morning to Ken in the proper way when I can find the right button. Here we go. There's that. No, Dan Cullen says, is it a duck? Oh, no. Is it a Cat 631? It is not one of those. Is it a Cat 235B ME? Yeah, kind of right direction, but not. No, not one of those. Keep the guesses coming. Chris Ford says Cat 245D. It is not. Dan is asking Ken a question. How are you enjoying the new machine, Ken? Ken, please let him know. Frank over at Diacon says, hey, good evening, good morning, good everything. Earl Fallon's just joined us over on Instagram as well. Good of you to join us, Earl. Hope you're all fit and well down there, my friend. Yes, keep those guesses coming in. I will reveal more about the mystery machine in just a moment. But before we get to that, I'm just going to remind you very, very quickly of today's question of the day. Yeah. My question for today is this. What is the most random thing you have ever seen or heard? I'll give you a lead in because I've got a couple of my own, okay? So when myself and my family were moving, my parents were moving out of London out to Surrey, which is where I live now. We went to visit the house that we were moving to. Now, as far as we were concerned, coming from Battersea, driving out to Sutton, it was a big deal. It was out in the country-ish. So big deal. So we went out, we saw the house before we moved in. Everyone was happy. Drove home, and to drive home from what would soon be our new home in Sutton back to Battersea, where we were coming from, we had to go past a place called Rose Hill. Anyone knows Surrey will know there's a big roundabout at Rose Hill. We came to the roundabout, and there was a van, a big sort of open back van, parked actually on the roundabout, two wheels up on the roundabout, and there was a guy, and this is no word of a lie, there was a guy sat in the road with a television in front of him, and he was fixing the television. He had a screwdriver, and I think he was basically putting the back on the television. As far as I can tell, the television had fallen off the back of the van, literally quite off the back of a lorry, into the road. And rather than picking it up and putting it back in the van and driving off, no, he parked the van, he got out, and he sat in the road and he fixed the television. That's one. Here's another one. So I was with my daughter Courtney, who's currently in Greece with my wife, but we were over in I've gone blank. At Glastonbury Festival. My daughter was about 14 at the time, and the pair of us were sharing a tent. And we were laying there early hours of the morning. And there was a bunch of people going past, and all we heard was a part of their conversation. And the part that we heard was, don't worry, if they start trouble, we have garlic bread. I don't know what led up to that conversation and what carried on after it, but don't worry, if they start trouble, we have garlic bread. What the hell? So, what about you? What is the most random thing you have seen or heard? Love to hear from you. Now, let's have a look. Go back to the mystery machine. Gary Muirhead is going for the 219D. Close, but no cigar. There's my other half. So I can see you tonight. Yeah, I'll be picking her up about 9:15, 9:30, something like that. Dan Cullen is going for a Sani 300. It is most definitely not one of those. Chris Ford, Cat 225D LCSA. Well, no, but man alive, you're close. Ken Hatcher says, I'm on a new site, got 5G, but it's not a good connection, buffering all the time. I wish I could boost the signal, but I can't. Dan is going for a Lugong 950E. It's not. Let me give you a little bit more. There you are. It's looking slightly the worse for wear, that machine, which is not surprising given the age of it. But there you are. That's what you've got to work with today. Anybody got any clues on that? Love to hear from you. I'll come back in just a moment because we've got to crack on with the show. Starting with a bit of this. Right, okay. I've just been reminded by my daughter. Apparently, it wasn't if they start trouble. It was if they insult us, we have garlic bread. I'm not sure that changes the context at all. But if they insult us, we have garlic bread. Yes, the fallback weapon of all major powers around the world. Garlic bread. 2 days now. Can't watch it today. Oh, not a problem. It's on catch up. Jim Turner suggests they may have been expecting trouble from vampires. It's a good point. Chris Ford going for the 225 BLC for the Mystery Machine. It is not. Peter McKenna going for the Cat 235. You're all in the right ballpark. You're just not on the money, as it were. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show we were going to have a bit of a battle royale. I don't know what it is. This must be excavator season or something like that, because we've got back-to-back brand new excavators to show you. And the first one is what we learned while we were at Eskilstuna with the fine folks at Volvo. We've shown you the machines, now we're going to tell you about them. This is the new Volvo family of excavators.
My name is Mikhail Avdeyev, and I work as product manager since 2005 in Volvo, and I'm responsible mainly for the wheel loaders and articulated haulers, but also one of my responsibilities is excavators. This new word in the Volvo excavators family, because it's a fully electronic control of the hydraulic functions. So in the cab now we don't have any hydraulics at all, and the joysticks are electronical control electronics, and also we have electronical pedals for the travel mode. It's help you to get a lot of benefits from the machine, because you can adjust a lot of things related to the work and performance of the machine and improve them significantly. And through this display, operator can configure a lot of features related to his job. Because, for example, in some cases, he needs faster function of the boom rising or boom lowering, or some cases faster swing of the machine, so he can adjust those things with the help of this display. And we're trying to improve the safety. So, for example, simple things, the safety belt, it's 3-point belt in those machines, if you will check, and we will go for the 4-point belts in the future. Protection from fallen objects, protection from the rolling of the machine in case of the accident. So the operator really protected in the machine, in the new generation especially. I think that the main difference between the new and previous generation, it's a huge difference in efficiency. You don't need to run the engine with the such RPMs that we had in the past. So you can easily perform the same job as in the past with the 2000 RPMs. You can do this job with 1600 or even less.
I mean, just watch that a little more closely. A couple of cameos in there. You may have seen Fred strolling through the background in that one, but also Mike Wolf at the controls of, I think that was the new 400 from Volvo. What do you think? What do you think of the new Volvos? While you're thinking about that, let me go back to all things Mystery Machine. Peter McKenna is going for the Cat 235. Chris Ford is going for the Cat 365 CME. It is not. Dan Cullen is sticking with his guns, going for Lugong. It's definitely not a Lugong 915F. It's not one of those. Gary Muirhead is going for the Cat 229D. All of you that are invoking the name Caterpillar are all very close, but none of you are on the money quite yet. I do have a fantastic comment from Gary Muirhead, but I'll come to that a bit later in the show. There you are. I tell you what, I'll give you 2 bytes. There you are. That's 2 bits of the machine that we need to identify today. If you've got any ideas, please let us know in the chat. If anybody over on Instagram has any clue what that machine might be, please let us know. You're able to win over there as well. Can't take part in tonight's competition over on Instagram, but you can certainly take part in the Mystery Machine right here and right now. Take that away, because we do need to crack on, and we need to crack on with a bit of this. I've said we've got a battle royale of excavators. That was part 1. That's the red corner. We'll be back with the blue corner in just a second.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
So that is the latest word in Volvo excavators. How about the latest word in Komatsu excavators?
With the construction, quarry, and mining industries embracing elevated sustainability goals, you'll need an excavator that helps improve productivity and increase fuel efficiency to help reduce operating costs at your job sites. Choose the efficient and effective performance of the Komatsu PC900 LC11 excavator to help you meet those challenges. This machine is 40% more efficient with Tier 4 final engine technology and larger cooling cores that enable the engine to maintain its optimal operating temperature range, while enhanced hydraulic circuits optimize energy use, allowing fast and precise movements of the excavator's boom, arm, and bucket. Finish digging tasks quickly and tackle hard materials like compacted soil, rocks, and gravel efficiently, with 11% stronger bucket digging force to help minimize the need for multiple passes. The PC900 LC11 features 3 selectable work modes for high productivity or fuel efficiency, and boom raise priority and swing priority modes, so your operators can adjust their operation to best suit their loading work conditions. This machine also has an 11% increase in swing torque, improving swing speed to help reduce cycle times, make material handling more efficient, and tackle a wide range of applications to help contribute to overall job site efficiency. The time to elevate your efficiency and sustainability goals is now. Start with the PC900 LC11 excavator and embrace the journey by promoting faster digging with improved cycle times at your job sites. Contact your local Komatsu dealer to learn how the PC900 LC11 excavator can help you meet your goals today.
Yeah, got a few people struggling with connection today, as Dan Cullen saying. Lost the last 5 minutes as coverage went wallop. So, I saw something on Twitter yesterday. Somebody actually described somebody as an insult as a walloper. Anybody ever been called a walloper? I remember I've seen a Komatsu PC 750 Rockbuster working in a quarry. Wow, what a beast. Yeah, we saw the PC 3000 working up in Northumberland or Northumbria or wherever it was. That's quite an animal as well. Now, we're getting very, very close. Gary Muirhead has gone for the Cat 215B. Mark Whiting has gone for the 215 LC. This is very, very specific. But let me just tell you, in terms of product, you're on the money. Both of you are on the money. But there's another bit. There's a little bit more. And I'll tell you now, it's not a long undercarriage or a wide undercarriage. There's a little bit. Never mind. We are all there. We're there. There we are. Cat 215B SA. That is precisely what it is. and I can prove it. Well done, Gary Muirhead. That would have taken you probably to the top of the league table if the league table had started, but it hasn't. So there we are. Do you remember when excavators looked like that? Boxy as all hell. But I do remember the Cat 215B SA. Yeah, anybody else? Dan going for the Cat 215 GC. No, it's not. It is the 215 BSA. Dan says we have a lady delivery saw today, and she was on the ADT last week. Well done, that lady. Long may she continue. A lovely old machine. Yeah, absolutely. Saw plenty of 215s in the iron back in the day. A long time ago it feels, but yeah, plenty of those about back in the day. So it is time to move on. We already know our winner of the mystery machine, so I'll be right back after this with a Big Bang revisited. I don't know if this is an accepted term or a phrase, but I do like it. Chris Field says, close. Egg, no bird. I've never heard that before, but I do like it. And I say good morning to Virtual Samson over on Instagram, who just said those machines are a beast. I think he was talking about the PC 900 from the mighty Komatsu. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us as well. Good of you to join us. Now, earlier this week, we brought you about, 25 seconds of a blast that took place earlier. Last weekend, actually. Well, we've now got the proper film. I did promise that we would try and do that. So I'm just going to tell you, Virtual Samson is also in Australia. Good day from Australia. Good day from the UK, my friend. Thank you very much indeed for being here. So we've now got Frank from Diacon Demo and Virtual Samson also from Australia. Yeah, I can't resist. I'm quite big down under. Enough of that. I did promise you that we would bring you more footage of this big blast. We can now do so. Stand by.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
Oh, Chris Ford's on good form this morning. Was that blast rigged? Well done. Well done. Incidentally, I've mentioned the fact that we've got a couple of Aussies watching over from, not surprisingly, Australia. That blast was actually done by Liberty Industrial. It was the explosive part of it was done by PDC, who are based here in the UK, but it was a Liberty Industrial job. Liberty Industrial are Australian. So, yes, very much kangaroo flavoured today. For some reason, and I'm just going to very quickly digress. Mick Norton posted this earlier on LinkedIn, and I was going to try and address it at the end of the show, but it didn't come across, but it's now come across, so I may as well address it now. Suicide statistics in construction claims that two or more suicides per day with construction workers must be directly attributable to their construction employment. What absolute nonsense. What about other causation factors, bereavement, drugs, alcohol, housing problems, money problems, and ending of a relationship, to name but a few? All valid arguments. And I'm not entirely sure of exactly how they go about devising that or divining what industry people work in and everything else. But bearing in mind that some of those causation problems could well be construction related, construction and demolition related. For example, money problems. If you're constantly worried about where your next pay packet is going to come from, if you are worried about the company that employs you dropping you like a hot brick or possibly going out of business, that's going to be an issue. Bereavement, can't deal with, but drugs and alcohol are a coping mechanism, and it's often a coping mechanism that is used by those in demolition construction because they are constantly under pressure, constantly under stress. So I take your point, Mick. And I certainly can't sit here and say that all of those suicides are directly attributable, but there is a lowest common denominator here. 749 suicides in 2022, all of which were employed in construction, and it was 600 and whatever it was, 660 odd the year before. So 1,400 in 2 years. Even if you believe that to be nonsense, you have to say construction and demolition has a higher suicide rate than most. Now, whether one causes the other, I'll leave you to argue amongst yourselves. But there is the common denominator there is an employment in demolition and construction. Whether that is a direct cause, who knows? But it does seem awfully odd that so many suicides happen among people, men predominantly, in the demolition and construction industry. Thrash it out amongst yourselves, people, because I will be right back after a sousson of this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Here's an interesting take, and I think it's always worthwhile taking that step back, and I think this is a valid point. Chris Ford says, is it that people committing suicide are drifting into construction because they can find work in construction, not elsewhere? Now, I've suggested in the past, and it hasn't won me many friends, but I've suggested in the past that construction and demolition for many is a last resort, particularly where you have low levels of employment. So, traditionally like the northeast of England and places like that, low levels of employment. So you leave school possibly with some qualifications, quite possibly not, and you basically end up with three options. The first option is that you claim benefits and do nothing. Second option is that you join the armed forces, and the third option is you join the construction and demolition industry. So I wonder, as Chris has rightly pointed out, are we making our workers so stressed that some of them see the only way out as being taking their own lives? Or are we taking people that are already partially or fully broken because construction and demolition is the only job they are able to get? So are we actually taking on the broken and the already troubled? It's a really good point. I've never thought about it like that before, but I do think it's an interesting point. Now, I've already mentioned the fact that I've dropped a new column today. That always sounds unpleasant. Dropped a new column. I've written a new article, and it's about history repeating. I'm going to address this very quickly. Gary Muirhead says, have you booked a taxi for your wife and daughter tonight because you know how long those after dark shows go on? Yeah, I am painfully aware. I mean, I can get to Gatwick from here in about 20 minutes. So long as we're finished by 9, I'll be okay. If not, it's going to be a very, very quick call to Uber and get them to bail out my wife and daughter. But yeah. So I've wrote an article. I wrote it a couple of days ago, and I did actually flag up that I was going to be dropping it today. And it's called History Repeating. And there's so much. The thing that triggered this in my head was the notion of electrification and hydrogenization of the industry, and the fact that we've been here before. Back in the day, somebody would have gone and knocked on a construction equipment company's door and said, "We've got this newfangled thing that runs on steam." Steam, how very dare you, never darken my doorstep again. We have men to do this work. And then fast forward, a few decades, and somebody comes along and says, "I see you're a big steam user, but have you considered diesel? Diesel, damn your eyes, never darken my doorstep again." Well, things do seem to go in cycles. So I've written an article, but I wanted to discuss it today. So I very, very quickly pulled together, and you'll be able to see in just a second, I pulled this together very, very quickly using AI. But I'd like you to watch it because this is history repeating itself time and time and time again. And at the very end, there might even be a hint at something for the future. So sit back for a minute. In actual fact, it's 59 seconds. Sit back for 59 seconds and let this play on your brains.
A salesman just came in here trying to sell me an excavator made in Japan. I told him the cab was too small, that the machine would rust, that there was no after-sales support, and I told him we only buy machines made in Europe. A salesman just came in here trying to sell me an excavator made in Korea. I told him the cab was too small, that the machine would rust, that there was no after-sales support, and I told him we only buy machines made in Europe or Japan. A salesman just came in here trying to sell me an excavator made in China. I told him the cab was too small, that the machine would rust, that there was no after-sales support, and I told him we only buy machines made in Europe, Japan or Korea. A salesman just came in here trying to sell me an excavator made in India. I told him the cab was too small, that the machine would rust, that there was no after-sales support, and I told him we only buy machines made in Europe, Japan, Korea, or China.
It's all just a little bit of history repeating.
Yes, thank you, Dame Shirley Bassey, for ending that. History repeating indeed. I've lived through all of that. I really have lived through all of that. And as I say, I was there in the 80s when the first Japanese excavators made landfall here in the UK. And they were widespread derision. Oh, look at them, boxy. They look like they're going to rust. No European could ever fit in a cab that small. They're for tiny Japanese people. Blah 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 blah. Fast forward a decade, along comes the Koreans. By which time the likes of Komatsu and Hitachi are now an accepted part of the industry. Along come the Daewoo's of this world. And they were greeted with derision and insults, and they were told their machines were too boxy, cabs were too small, no after-sales support. Fast forward about another 25 years, and along come the Chinese, and they get exactly the same treatment, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And think about this. The Japanese were derided when they first arrived. I would strongly suggest that the Japanese make some of the best excavators in the entire world now. There are others. There are some very good ones, but I would suggest that the Japanese make some of the best excavators in the world, and they have been truly embraced, both in demolition, construction, plant hire. They have been embraced. The Koreans came along. They too were derided. Now look at it. Now look, when you've got Hitachi, Hyundai, and you've got Demolition, all of whom have been widely accepted. Currently, there's a debate about the Chinese. Obviously, there is concern about anti-dumping and everything else, but also both the Japanese and the Koreans went through anti-dumping tariffs as well. So we're now doing it for the third time. So with all that being said, bearing in mind that India is one of the most populated countries in the world, they already have equipment manufacturing. Could they be the next? And if so, will we greet them with exactly the same thing? Yes, they're far too cheap. They look like they could rust with the first fall of rain. There's no after-sales support, and the cabs are too small. Because we've already done it 3 times. Could we do it a 4th? Could we do it a 5th? You know, when Ukraine and Russia all sorts itself out, could we end up maybe with Russian imports? Who the hell knows? If the Chinese are getting anti-dumping, what about other manufacturers? It's, as I say, it's been the same time and time again. So in the 80s, the early Japanese manufacturers were hit. They resolved it, and some of them resolved it by actually starting to build the machines here, but they accepted the tariffs and what have you. Koreans did exactly the same. You know, they started to manufacture in Europe to circumnavigate some of that. So that's the way they've gone. The Chinese are currently facing it. The difference with the Chinese, and I think that's one of the concerns that JCB have aired, is the fact that the Chinese manufacturers are effectively state sponsored. So you've got the likes of JCB and other European manufacturers, Volvo. Mine's gone completely blank. Volvo and Liebherr and people like that, who are basically competing against the Chinese government, which again, that also skews things slightly in if we end up imposing, and as far as I'm aware, the only suggestion at the moment is to impose tariffs here in the UK. If we impose tariffs here in the UK on cheap Chinese imports, do the Chinese then turn around and do exactly the same to English exports over in China? So you've got all of that. As I say, the Japanese resolved their anti-dumping, the Koreans resolved their anti-dumping, and I have no question that the Chinese will do exactly the same. They'll pay the they'll all pay the bill as they can afford it. Yeah, they can afford it. They can afford it, and as I say, they can also afford to rather disrupt exports as well. Although a lot of the manufacturers here in Europe have actually set up shop over in China as well, so maybe they saw that coming. I don't know, but the thing that I found interesting is the fact that it is literally the same thing in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2020s, and for all I know, in the 2030s as well. History repeating. Go and have a look at the article. Thank you to Dame Shirley Bassey for lending her voice, and the Propeller Heads who played the music. That's where that story started, funnily enough. It's an old tune, and I heard it and thought, I could use that, and that's exactly where it started. Now, going back to all things suicidal. Jim Turner says, unless someone leaves a note that says they can't cope with work, wages, site, etc. anymore, then the reason is very open-ended. What I will say is there is a big trend of folk burning the candle at both ends: recreation, drink and drug use, and not truly being passionate about the job they do. And say that goes for the majority of folk on site. Yeah, there is a degree of that, but. And I don't want to come across as wokey Wokerson here, but when you think about it, when I was talking to my AI assistant the other day, because that's the thing I do now. When I was talking to Bruce, my AI assistant, the other day, I suggested that the construction and demolition, in many ways, is a perfect storm for poor mental health. If you think about isolation, loneliness, working away for long periods of time, constantly under stress and constantly under pressure, concerns over where your next pay packet is coming from. Now, as an example, I know Dan's changed jobs 4 or 5 times since he first joined us on the show. Footy, our friend Footy, is 2 days into a new job with a new company as of today. And Peter McKenna is exactly the same. You go to work on a Monday morning, and there's no guarantee that you'll still be working there come Friday. In fact, there's no guarantee you'll still be working there come Tuesday. All of that is, as I discussed with AI Bruce or Bruce AI, it is a perfect storm. There is lots and lots and lots there, all taken individually. Money pressures, money concerns, loneliness, isolation, stress, pressure. All of those individually can lead to mental health issues. Construction and demolition has gone one better. I said, all of those problems, you can have them all in one big package. Does that mean that we are contributing? Personally, I think the evidence, regardless of what Mick says, and regardless of the lack of note that says it was down to construction, I think that the fact that we're almost 3 times the national average, that surely there is a common denominator there. Love to get your thoughts. Be interested to see what they're doing in construction regarding management, operator, tradesmen, labour, etc. I knew a painter committed suicide, nothing to do with work. He was diagnosed with cancer. Wouldn't have been fatal, but would that be counted as construction related? I don't know. And listen, I'm not naive enough to believe that there will be exceptions. You may have got home one night from work and discovered that your wife's been shagging your next door neighbour, and you've decided, well, I can't go on without her. It's an extreme reaction, and I'd like to think that's not the case. That would not be a construction-related death. But also, let's forget, we've actually had suicides committed on sites. On sites, there was one, or there were a couple actually. There was a guy jumped to his death, and a guy actually walked onto a site in London, a construction site for a major contractor, got himself a Stanley knife, and he cut his own throat. Why did he do that at work? Why did he not sort of take himself off at home or in his digs or whatever it might be? There's got to be a reason there. Demo King number 1 has just joined us. Doesn't look familiar, but Demo King number 1. Thank you for joining us. Talking about Ross, the JCB, 1 year old, and there's Rush showing on the cab, says Dan Cullen. Researchers will mess around with statistics to suit their work. Job categories in the UK with the highest suicide rates. Vets are the highest, dentists are 6th, doctors are 10th, and farmers are 13th. Is that right? Is that right? Demo King has just said good morning. Good morning. Where are you watching from, my friend? Demo King. If the China... No, we've done that one. JCB years ago were happy to take their machines and badge them off as their own. Look at JS 130, which was a Sumitomo. All very true. All very true. Yeah, a good many of the manufacturers today have started with their machines coming from out of the Far East. Demo King is in Los Angeles. It's probably very early hours of the morning in Los Angeles right now, but I would imagine. Are you among the Americans that have got the extreme weather? Is it super hot where you are? If so, I'm jealous of the fact that you're in Los Angeles. But if you've got the super hot weather, I'm even more jealous still. Dan Cullen says, yes, that's so true, Jim. I often get asked, how are you so lively every day? My reply was, I'm living the dream in what I'm doing. Yeah. I go back to the point that Chris Ford made. If the only job you are able to get is in construction, can you be passionate about a job that you're kind of forced into? Probably not. And our friend Demo King has got the weather. Very jealous. Gary Muirhead, what about construction workers killed going to work? Are these people included in the figures? Not in the suicide figures. That's where you've got a slight, there's a disconnect. So things like suicides under RIDDOR or anything like that, they're not included in the industry fatality statistics at all. There's a separate set of figures. And my guess, and I don't actually know the answer to this, I'm sure Mick may be able to put his finger on the answer, but my guess is if you're a construction worker and you are killed on the road on the way to work, or in a rail crash, or you're run over by a bus on your way to work, that is not considered a construction fatality, even if you're wearing full PPE and you're hard out at the time. I don't believe that's considered a construction industry death. Quite where I've always had an issue with the fatality figures anyway. The actual on-site fatalities, because they mix construction and demolition. So even when demolition has had a really, really good year of, really minimizing accidents, minimizing fatalities, if construction's had a bad year, you get tarred with the same brush. I wish they were separated. I wish there was some way to do that. So the figures are not as reliable as they should be. But here's the thing. And I was thinking this the other day when I was first talking about the subject of suicides. Regardless, 1,400 in 2 years, so 2021, 2022, 1,400 suicides in which the victim was employed in construction. Even if only 10%, even if only 5% of those are directly attributable to their role in construction and demolition, that is still worse, by some margin, worse than the people that are killed by falls from height, slips and trips, being struck by machines, and everything else. So, yes, I take your point. I take your point that it's very, very, it's overly simplified to lump all of those suicides together and say they are all construction's problem. But even if a fraction, 5% of those are construction related, they are still causing more deaths than actual on-site accidents. Does that not require discussion? Does that not require action? That's the point I'm wondering here. Demo Darv, our friend Andy Darvell, just joined us as well. Morning. Late for mustard. Not a problem at all. You can watch us on catch up. Now, just a very quick reminder, Mr. Darvell, given what you do for a living, don't forget tonight, 7 o'clock. Monsieur Gilles René will be here to talk about all things Caterpillar demolition specifically. And we've got some new products to show you. We've got the latest leg of Gilles' European demolition tour to show you as well. Open to questions, open to answers as well. Plus, we've got 2 models, and I'm not going to get them out again because of fingerprints. We've got 2 models of a Caterpillar breaker, all mounted on a little Caterpillar plinth, like a rock plinth, and you've got the breaker that sticks in the top. Can you see mine? Mine is on top. Let's have a look. Can you see just there? That's my one, just there. Let's get back to where it's roughly there, I think. Garvin over at Mostly Diggers just said, I know it will never be a thing in construction, but I feel a 4-day working week, even if it's 12 hours a day, will be welcomed by many workers. Work-life balance is tough on people. Yeah, it is. It is. And bearing in mind, construction and demolition, not unusual to work a 6-day week, even if it's sort of a half day on a Saturday. But if you're working away, I saw this in a slightly different way with my father, because my father did night work for quite some time, and it absolutely, I'm trying to think of the technical term, but it fucked him up, basically. The problem you have with working away, let's say you're working, too far away to make it home every night, so you end up in digs. So you're there first thing on a Monday morning, so you've left on a Sunday night to be there on the Monday morning. You then work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You finish on a Friday. Do you go home on the Friday? Possibly. If not, do you go home on the Saturday? So you go home on the Saturday, you kiss the wife on both cheeks, you pat your children on the head, you throw your clothes into the washing machine, you have a night's kip, and then the following morning you get up and you pack your bag ready to do it again. Is that, bearing in mind, as our friend Mostly Diggers has just said there, work-life balance. There is no balance. It's an imbalance, a total imbalance. And as I say, my father was working nights and tried desperately to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at night. So he would sleep during the day, work at night. And then on a Saturday, or Saturday and a Sunday, he would try to flip back. So he'd get up on a Saturday to go and watch me play football, or, take my mum shopping or whatever it might be. And then on Sunday, he'd try and get out fishing and everything else. And then come Sunday night, he'd be getting ready for work. And he'd basically sleep Sunday night, get up Monday morning, and go from Monday morning at sort of 8 o'clock when he woke up, right the way through to starting work at 10:30 that night. Expert Demolition, Pty Limited. Pty, are you also in Australia? What's happened? Is this an Aussie takeover? I mean, I know we've got our friend Demo King 1 over in Los Angeles, but that could well be our third Aussie today. Let's have a look. I do this. I go home Friday, do laundry Saturday and shopping, and back up the road on Sunday. Yeah. Now, Dan is the exception to the rule because, he lives for this stuff. I'm not even going to finish that sentence. I want to show you what Gary Muirhead has said. You work to live, not live to work. Yeah. Now, as I say, I know Dan is the exception because he lives for this stuff. But imagine, we were talking yesterday about the skill shortage in the industry, and about the fact that it's growing and people are going to retire. Imagine actually sitting down with a young person today and explaining to them the true nature of working construction. Okay. Now, I've always referred to that as, you get to work in the rain and it's muddy sites and stuff. But you think about that, right? So the truth of working in demolition and construction is you arrive on site a bit green, a bit wet behind the ears, and you will be given a hard time by those that you work with and those that you work for. Even if you make it through that, from the time you arrive at work to the time you go home at night, you will be under constant pressure. There will be somebody, be it the main contractor, the subcontractor above you, or your site supervisor or your site manager, will be on you. Do this, do this, do this, do this. You will be under constant pressure. You don't know necessarily whether you'll still be employed in a week's time. You don't know whether your company, your employer, will still be in business in a week's time. And then on top of all of that, on top of all of that, you explain to that young person, yeah, it's fantastic. Oh, the camaraderie, you'll love construction. By the way, you get 1 day a week in which to do your laundry to get back to work. You know that thing about going out with your friends at the weekend? Yeah, that's gone. You know that thing about meeting your mates for a beer in the middle of the week? That's gone too. You know that thing about relationships and going out for dinner with your wife on a Saturday night? That's gone because you're getting ready for work. Imagine trying to tell them the absolute truth, and how many would then say, yep, that sounds like the career for me? Would they? Jim Turner says, I go out the house at 7 a.m., get back in around 10 p.m., but I enjoy it, so it doesn't get me down. Again, Jim is another exception to the rule, much like Dan. But look at that. Look at that. That is, doing some very quick maths, that's a 15-hour day. That's a 50. That's a 75-hour week, which is Dan. Oh, and he also says he works 7 days, apart from a handful of days off. So it's not a 75 week, not a 75-hour week. It is more like a 105-hour week. When I was in the publishing industry back in the day, and I was working with a company that was heavily unionized, my working week was 32 and a half hours. Over that, overtime, 32 and a half hours. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have the work ethic, and I also had a weekly magazine to get out. So I wasn't exactly sat there with my feet up. When I was at work, I was at work. I was, but 32 and a half hour week compared to Jim Turner, who's clocking 100 hours plus. Again, go back to your average school leaver or your college leaver now and say, yes, calm along, come to this dangerous industry where suicide is not exactly the exception, and slips and trips and falls might kill you, and an excavator might run over you, and you'll be working in the pissing rain, being sworn at day in, day out. Oh, and by the way, you're going to be working 100 hours a week. How does that sound to you? Millennials, yes, millennials will never accept what their forebears endured to earn a crust. And although I understand their reluctance in 2024, I do not agree. I don't necessarily fully agree, but I wonder when you compare the two. When I compare the two, who's got it wrong? Who has got it wrong? I've said this before. I one of my best mates at school, he was the smartest guy in our entire year, and he ended up being a parcel force delivery man. And when I met up with him after, I hadn't seen him for about 20 years, and I said, parcel force, and he said, I own my own home. I go on holiday to Jamaica twice a year. I've got the car of my dreams, and I've been to every single one of my children's sports days, PTA meetings, and everything else. And I was sat there thinking, well, I missed my twins' first birthday, and all the various things that I've missed. I've missed Mother's Days and various other things. All of those things that I've missed, and I sat there and thought, I earn more money than you, but who's got it right? And in that instance, I think he's got it right. And comparing millennials with our forebears, which is tempting to do, don't forget our forebears also sent children up chimneys. They also sent lots of men underground into mines where they perished. I even though I'm a man of a certain age, I reckon that those that are coming through the ranks now, if they can make a living by only doing 30, 40 hours a week, bloody good luck to them, I say. Dan Cullen says, and by train, I love it, but many companies won't supply accommodation. If they did, I'd be doing this more as I'm making more contacts, proving my reliability and what I'm capable of. No, we did that one. Chris Ford, when I worked away, I used to dread going home. A mate of mine had been on a different job for 3 months before his wife found out he'd moved sites. He was married to the same woman all his life. I'm 39 years in, been together 44 years. Yeah. But I mean, I mentioned this the other day, we were talking about suicide and stuff, but I do wonder what the survival rate of marriages is within construction and demolition. My gut tells me it's not good. It's not good. I mean, I I have apart from the fact that she's currently swanning around in Greece at the moment, I have the benefit of basically working where I live. So I get to see my wife 24/7. And I'm quite happy with that. But if you are away more than you're there, surely that's how the cracks begin. Jim Turner's got an 8-hour daytime sheet. Yeah, I think he has. An 8-day timesheet, rather. Work 100 hours, get paid 45, mostly considering traveling to and from, fuel and breaks taken out of your pay. Work 100 hours and get paid for 45. Even that in this day and age. I've mentioned this years ago, but I think this gives you an example of the inequities of the business. Okay, so there is a training organization that I know who had one of their trainers was based in Cornwall, and they had another trainer who was based in Scotland. On one occasion, may have been more, but one occasion that I am aware of, the trainer from Cornwall travelled to Scotland to deliver training on the same day that the trainer from Scotland travelled to Devon to deliver training there. How often is that happening? How often is that happening? How many times are we sending men and women and machines up and down the motorway? Bearing in mind we're in an industry where we're talking constantly about sustainability and about our commitment to zero emissions and everything else. But how many zero emissions can you actually have if you're sending? Oh, excuse me. You're sending men, women, machines, and ancillary equipment up and down motorways all the live long day. Doesn't make any sense at all, does it? Doesn't make any sense at all. Chris Ford, what's wrong with a 100-hour week? And am I working or am I enjoying the job? It's fine if you are, but I will go back to that. You work to live, not live to work. Now, I'm a bad example of this myself because I get up with a spring in my step. These days, I really, really do. And I'm not going to get all slushy, but you guys are largely to blame for that. The day that I stepped back from magazine journalism and started to concentrate on this was a big, big step forward for me because it meant that I spent most of my time working at home, which I'm very, very comfortable with and very, very happy about. But it also allows me to interact and to just do my thing. I would do this 12 hours a day and it wouldn't bother me in the least. But should I? Should I? I am of the persuasion, I'd like to earn enough, but I don't want to be a millionaire. I've given up hopes of ever being one. I don't want to be a millionaire. I don't want thousands in the bank. I don't want a Ferrari on the front drive. Don't want any of that. I'd like to have enough to keep my family and safe and sound and everything else. Pass on a few quid to my children when I turn my toes up. That'll do me. But I certainly, I could quite happily, if I could do everything that I need to do, if I could do it all in 4 hours and then take the rest of the time out with family, yeah, I'd do that. Mick Norton says, my son often queried why back in the day for a 10-year period I commuted 1,000 miles a week, 6 days a week with often 12-hour days. In part, it kept a roof over our heads and paid for you to go to a top grammar school. Plus, and importantly, I loved what I did, which is great, which is fantastic. And I do think that's where the divide is. If you are Mick, if you're Jim, if you're Dan, or possibly even Chris, and you are doing something that you love, then fine. That's the expression, isn't it? If you're doing something you love, you'd never work a day in your life. I understand all of that. But that's not everyone. And particularly those people that somebody mentioned earlier in the show, those people that have kind of stumbled into construction or demolition as a completely last resort. I can't get a job doing anything else. I'll have to go and drive a broom for 6 months to get my feet under the table in construction. Is a 100-hour week, is an 80-hour week, is a 70-hour week really, really going to be good for their greater well-being? Jim Turner said, if you said to a millennial they could be paid well to play video games for 100 hours a week, they'd jump at it because they'd enjoy it. Well, I enjoy what I do, so I'm just as happy as a millennial on an Xbox. As happy as a millennial on an Xbox. Used to be as happy as Larry, but now it's as happy as a millennial on an Xbox. And funnily enough, there is a good point to be had there. My son Fred watches. He helped me build this live stream, but he watches quite a lot of live streams as well. And it's not unusual for proper live streamers, not me who plays at it, not unusual for proper live streamers, particularly in the gaming world, to be live streaming for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Now, okay, they're earning a very good screw out of it. And, the longer they're on, the greater the engagement, the greater earnings they have. So if somebody said, I'll pay you a couple of million quid a year to just sit here and play games and babble on, I could probably do that. Not sure I'd want to because I'm not a gamer, but I could probably do that. But it's a point. Gary Muirhead says it shouldn't matter how many hours you work a week, so long as you're happy. What you're doing when you're not happy, what you're doing, then stop and change it. Yeah, absolutely. But Gary's another example. He's married, got a couple of kids. He's the best part of your day, Gary, arriving on site when it's pouring with rain, or is it getting home to the good lady and the kids? Personally, getting home, good lady, kids, every single day. And I am fortunate. This year I've been to Italy, I've been to Sweden, I've been to France a couple of times, I've been to Germany a couple of times. I get around, all things being equal, we're off to Las Vegas later in the year, and I love all of that. But the best bit of my job sat right here. Dan says, my partner likes it when I work away and she knows I'll be home at the weekend and I work 12 hours a day, not stuck on trains packed with people. There you are, Gary Muirhead. Definitely family and holidays. Yeah. And why do we love holidays? Even if you go somewhere that's not beachy and sunny, if you go on a city break or whatever, but you're away from the stresses and the pressures and the demands of work. Yes, if you do go to, I know Gary's a Tenerife man, you go to Tenerife, bars are open all day, you got the sunshine, you got the sea and everything. Yeah, I take on board all of that. But the absolute truth, and I do it myself, that, and it's one of the reasons I go fishing. The idea of just emptying your brain for a day or two, a week or two, every once in a while. Just I'm not worrying about paying the bills. I'm not worrying about what I've got to do at work tomorrow. I'm not worrying about where the next pound note is going to come from. I'm just going to sit here and let the world go by, and I should watch it as it does so. Dan Cullen says, I love getting out to work every day as it keeps me busy, and I'm as happy as a pig in shite. And I know how to keep myself busy. I remember working 17 hours a day, driving tractors on farms and traveling to sites. Listen, we've all done it. I mean, back in the day, particularly in the run-up to things like SED back in the day, the old, the forerunner to Plant Works. I worked for the publishing company that owned SED. So we used to do these monster issues of the magazine. So, I was part of the plant desk, and the plant desk on Contract Journal would generally provide somewhere between 4 and 8 pages per week of content for the plant pages. But in the run up to SED, that 4 or 8 became 50, 60. So all of a sudden, it wasn't unusual. I do remember one instance where we pulled an all-nighter. The entire team pulled an all-nighter, and I was sent out as the junior member of the team to go and buy fish and chips for everybody. And I bought fish and chips, and it was that late. In actual fact, it was that late that when I got back with the fish and chips, they'd locked the entire building. And I had to go to a call box, because this is pre-mobile phones, and say, it's me, I've got your fish and chips, let me in. Yeah, back in the day. Wouldn't do it again at all. Although I am doing 2 shows today and I probably won't finish much before 9 o'clock. And I was sat here at 6:30. So who's the bloody idiot here? Right, people, enough. I am going to roll the outro in just a second. I'm going to link Gazelle into the chat to check on all things question of the day related. We can carry on talking about suicide and working hours and all that kind of thing after this final word from our key show sponsor. And don't forget, if you're signing off now, we'll be back here at 7 p.m. tonight with Caterpillar and Gilles Ronnet. See you in a sec. Right, let's get a bit of music in the background, shall we? Let's go for a bit of... Oh, a bit of that. Yeah, haven't had that one for a little while. How are we all doing today? Been very busy. Big Slim Bobby. That's a fantastic name. Big Slim Bobby over on Instagram. Thank you for joining us. Lots of people over on Instagram. I'm going to not going to bother with the hellos because we've already done all of that. Where's the question of the day? It's here somewhere. I've gone back too far, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, there's a link to the article. History repeating. Go and have a look if you like that kind of thing. Love to hear what you think. So there was my question of the day. What is the most random thing you have ever seen or heard? As I say, mine was a man literally sat in the road fixing a TV. Seriously, I couldn't make up something like that. And also that if they insult us, we have garlic bread. I wish I knew how that had actually started. So Peter McKenna comes back with very itchy snoot today. Woman in the fruit aisle of a shop was asking a shop assistant if the soil affected the taste of an apple. Looking perplexed for a bit, he replied, "Do you mean the trees?" And she abruptly replied, "No, I'm talking about apples, not bloody trees." To which the shop assistant said, "You mean the trees the apples grow on?" And hysterically, she responded, "Why are you talking about trees? Apples grow in the ground like potatoes. How did you get your job not even knowing simple basics?" Ah, yes, the ground apple. Really. There are some very odd people out there, aren't there? There really are. One of the reasons I lock my door at night. Let's have a look. Do we have any more of those? This is a belter. This is a belter from Gary Muirhead. "I saw a bloke in my street painting his fence with green paint. When he finished, he then decided to use what paint he had left to paint his car." It was old. The same paint match his fence and his car. I'm interested to know. I wonder if that worked as like a camouflage. You're walking towards the fence and there's a vague outline of a car there, but you can only actually see the windows and the tyres. Everything else has become one. Can you imagine that? I've not seen that for a long while, but do you remember? I know when I didn't learn to drive until I was about 22 years old, but I know a lot of my friends, when they first left school, maybe 17, 18 years old, they went out and bought themselves a cheap car, and it was not unusual for them to paint their car with a paintbrush, and you could always see the brush marks on the bonnet. Bloody awful. They were so proud. Look, I've got the new paint job on my Ford Escort. Yes, but it looks terrible. But it was a thing. Anybody else remember that? That was the what kicked us off going back down the suicide route. What about causation factors, bereavement, drugs, alcohol, housing problems, money problems, ending a relationship? All very true. In some ways, I liken that to the environmental climate change argument. We could, as a nation, sit here and say, "Oh, but we are just a teeny island in the middle of nowhere. There's no reason for us to go zero emissions, to recycle our waste and stuff, because it will not make any difference in the grand scheme of things." Suicide and mental health in the construction and demolition industry, even if, in my belief, even if only a tiny fraction of that 1,400 in 2 years were in any way construction related, should we as an industry not be doing something about it? Should we not be just aiming to be better? It's one of the reasons that I read books. It's one of the reasons that I listen to podcasts. It's one of the reasons that I watch YouTube tutorials. I'm big enough, ugly enough, and now old enough to know that I'm not competing with others. I'm basically competing with me of yesterday. You know, if today's show is even marginally better than yesterday's show, happy days. I've done what I set out to do. Surely construction and demolition is that. You know, we've conquered most of the things. You know, we've mechanized and automated a lot of the industry and so on. You know, we've progressed and we've progressed and we've progressed. So now surely we should be looking for those incremental changes. So incremental changes to reduce our emissions, incremental changes to reduce the stress on our workers, and incremental changes to improve the mental well-being and the physical well-being of those that we employ. Is that not just a sensible ask? Just incremental improvements each day. Let's go down to the bottom of the chat. Let's have a look. Chris Ford. On a holiday many years ago, watching someone going downhill backwards can't beat gravity. Oh, that was a skiing holiday many years ago. Watching someone going downhill backwards. Yeah, quite good. Quite good. Mike Wolf says, I have to say, Mark, riding my motorbike or bicycle really clears my head. I've tried fishing, but it doesn't work for me. Funnily enough, I was talking to my father-in-law. My father-in-law is on dialysis, so I'm picking him up a couple of days a week these days. There is transport available, but it would leave him out the house for hours and hours and hours. So, you know, as I'm local, I go and pick him up. So we were talking last night, and I guess I've never really thought about this until I'm saying this sentence, but in some ways he's become more like my surrogate dad because I lost my dad a couple of years ago. So I talked to my father-in-law quite a bit, and I was recounting to him my dad telling me, I would have been about, 10 years old at the time. And I remember saying to my dad, you know, why do you fish? And he said to me, trust me, you'll know one day, it will save your sanity. And I remember thinking at 10 years old, I don't even know what that means. But he was absolutely on the money. Absolutely on the money. Because I can go fishing, and I'm planning to do so hopefully this weekend. I can go fishing, sit down. Once I'm sat up, I'm sat down, I've sat up, and there's a float floating in front of me. Even if that float does not twitch for the next 4 or 5 hours, my brain is wiped. There's nothing. Mike has just said, clears your head. That's exactly it. My head is clear. I'm not sat there thinking about the content for my next podcast. I'm not sat there thinking about my trip to Hillhead. I am basically thinking about nothing. Nothing at all. Good morning to our friend Wolfie, all the way over in the US of A. Chris Ford says, suicide, a permanent answer to a temporary problem. I've mentioned this before, but I will say it again because, you know, who the hell knows who's listening? It's 18 years ago since my business partner killed himself. Left behind 6 children and horrendous circumstances. And in the run up to it, we'd had a period of exceptional growth. We had a joint company, and we'd literally doubled our turnover year on year on year for about 6 or 7 years, I would guess. And then the recession hit. And not only did the recession hit, but we've been factoring invoices. So we were working with NatWest Bank, and NatWest Bank were basically, we would submit our invoices to them. They would pay it, but then they would chase the money on our behalf because we were so busy we didn't have time to do it. Well, little did we realise that not only were we paying for the privilege of doing that, but if they couldn't get the money in, that debt came back to us. The whole thing went tits up. We ended up with a problem. We were summoned to the NatWest Bank in Tottenham Court Road in London, and we were asked to bring along our accounts. Their people looked at it, we looked at it, and they basically said, the company, if you close the company today, you will owe us, the bank, £36,000, and you're jointly and severally responsible for that debt. So basically, I had a debt to the bank of 18 grand. Now, you know, 18 grand is quite a bit of money, but, you know, I mean, I walked out of that meeting thinking 18 grand, I'll either pay it back over the next 6 months or I'll get a bank loan against the house or whatever. I'll pay it in one big hit and I'll pay it back over a couple of years. So bearing in mind, I knew that the company was folding. I went into that meeting feeling very, very bad, and I came out of it thinking, not a problem. We've got that sorted. No trouble at all. So I went home, told my good lady wife, it's only 18 grand, not the end of the world. We'll carry on regardless, and we'll pay it back somehow. Fast forward to about 8 o'clock that night, and I got a phone call from my former business partner's wife, who said, can you tell me what happened today? I said, yeah, we sat down and we went through it all, and the debt is 36 grand. So I owe 18 and your husband owes 18 grand. And she said, well, he sat here telling me he owes £150,000 and he doesn't know what he's going to do. Now, I'd never seen something like that before. If I heard that sort of story again now, I'd be prepared for it, but I was unprepared for it at the time. What I didn't realise was he was on a downward spiral, and actual common sense didn't really fit his narrative anymore. So he had built it up and built it up and built it up into in his head to the point where he wasn't actually listening to rational argument anymore. He was just plucking figures out the air. So a few months later, I started to pay off my 18 grand. I got a phone call from our old office manager to say, have you seen him? I said, no. Oh, he's gone missing. So I literally got my car keys, jumped in the car, and my phone rang. Don't worry, he's just turned up. He's not in a particularly good way, but he's turned up. So I came back home again and carried on. Anyway, fast forward about 2 months, and I get the same phone call again. So I said, okay, I'm on my way. I got all the way there, no sign of him, nothing at all. And then we got a phone call from his son, who said he'd been out to look for him, had found him, and had taken him back to his flat, the son's flat, and was just about to make him a cup of tea. So we all, that's a relief. Yeah, we'll sort all this out on, next time we're all together, but at least he's safe. When my former business partner's son was out in the kitchen making a cup of tea, my business partner snuck out the back door, jumped in his car, took himself off to a Premier Inn, not a million miles away. With him, he had a bottle of scotch and a big handful of pills, and he took his own life. So going back to Chris Ford, just to round that off before I get to Chris Ford, our business that we'd had together, we were 36 grand in the hole. Within 6 months, we were back in profit. So as Chris has said there, suicide, a permanent answer to a temporary problem. If he'd have hung on for probably 4 months, maybe even 3, if I hung on for 3 months, all of that would have been null and void. And the crazy thing was, I met my business partner's brother. Never met him before, but I met him at the funeral. And he said, what went on? And I had to actually say, I actually don't know. I laid out all the facts. Here's what the bank told us. Here are the facts, both of which match. But somewhere along the line, he had basically got in his head that things were much, much worse. And he was temporarily, and as it turns out, permanently, mentally ill. He something had snapped, and as a result, he took his own life. And yet, if he'd have hung on for just a couple of months longer, all okay. Dan Cullen says, I remember going down a steep field on the bonnet of a car, picked up so much momentum, I ended up going under a fence across the main road and landing in a pit of cow manure. To this day, never knew how. Well, didn't get ripped to shreds by barbed wire fence. Well, you got lucky. You got lucky. Random experiences, okay? So this one I created of my own. I've got to be honest, not entirely sure what made me do it, but I was young and naive, and I do remember a friend of mine climbing on the roof of my car, and I could see his fingers on the driver's side and on the passenger side, clinging onto the roof. I drove all the way home with my friend on the roof. Yeah. And on the same subject, Mike Wolf, don't come at me. I realise that's a terrible thing to do. World Highways will never speak to me again. I was very young. I was very naive. I wouldn't do it now. Here's another one, right? So my dad, I've already mentioned my dad for most of my adult life was a chauffeur. It's a chauffeur where I come from, but a chauffeur. He drove people for a living, okay? Usually very, very posh, very smart cars and everything else. But he'd been on, he'd done the advanced driving test, but he'd also done the, I can't remember what it's called. Is it called the strategic or the defensive driving test? Like the, you know, the guys that protect the royal family and the Prime Minister and whatever, they go on a special driving test. Evasive, I think is the word, evasive driving test. So he'd done that. My dad was a supremely good driver. I don't mean operating a car at the edge of sanity. You could not feel a gear change, regardless of whether he was driving an automatic or a manual. So one Sunday morning, we got up. We were going fishing, and we were going fishing in West Drayton, which is about a 40-minute drive from where I was living at the time. So we packed the car, and my dad used to have this like jade green jacket that he always wore fishing, and he threw it on the roof. Unbeknown to me, I'm sat in the passenger seat, he's sat in the driving seat, and we set off. And we set off on this journey, drove for 45 minutes, and we pulled up at the Grand Union Canal in West Drayton, and he put the brakes on, and his jacket slid down the windscreen. He'd driven 45 minutes without disturbing a jacket. I don't know why I've just remembered that. Just came to me. Maybe because it was like Dan. He's horse manure. Is there any more? No, I think we've covered just about everything, and that is an hour and 22 minutes. Now, as you well know, I do have my other half coming home tonight, so I have a spot of hoovering and cleaning to do, among other things. I'm also getting ready for tonight's show as well. We will be back here at 7 p.m. with Gilles Ronnet from Caterpillar. It really is. It's going to be a great show. We've got a couple of prizes to give away, which shouldn't really matter because the content is going to make it well worth you being here. So hopefully you have all made it home in time. Even those of you that are working 14-hour days, please try to get home and do that. Dan Cullett says, I remember everyone called me Mad Max. I remember I used to drive down a road on a tractor on a job, last minute decisions, lock on side brake and go 180 on main road and off and on two wheels. Good Lord. Have a great day, lads. Yes, you do have a good day, but don't forget, let's have a good evening. I want loads and loads and loads of questions tonight. I want Gilles to go away thinking, feeling battered but satisfied. I want him to be inundated with questions. So go away and think about all the things you've always wanted to ask about Caterpillar and Demolition, but were afraid to, because tonight's your chance. Jim Turner, don't spoil Ruth's fun. She'll have missed the Hoover. Save it for her. Yes, Jim, you don't know my wife at all. There would be stabbings, and I'd be at the wrong end of it. I'm going to go and Hoover. It's not going to take me long, but I'm going to Hoover. Everybody have a fantastic day. Hope to see you tonight. And if you can't make tonight, not a problem. I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, everybody have a fantastic day. All the best.